Rain had a way of making the city honest. It washed the dust off glass towers and forced people to look down into puddles, reflections, and sometimes themselves. For Charlotte Ivy, it was the only sound that ever made her feel less alone. Every afternoon after classes, she walked 3 blocks from the university to the little cafe tucked between a pharmacy and a laundry shop. The sign above it flickered like it had stage fright, Brood Awakenings. She always smiled at that. Inside, the place smelled like roasted beans, lemon cleaner, and survival. Charlotte worked the evening shift there, saving every dollar, stretching every tip. If customers knew how many times she'd counted coins under the counter, they might have tipped her out of pity. But pity was a language she refused to learn. She lived in a shared apartment with Naomi Holt, a roommate who was majoring in fashion and financial panic. Naomi believed in 3 things: hair volume, online sales, and the power of manifestation. Charlotte, on the other hand, believed in God, caffeine, and showing up. That evening, the rain came down sideways, the kind that bullied umbrellas and soaked people's socks within seconds. Through the fogged window, Charlotte saw him. A man sat across the street, half sheltered under a bus stop, his coat torn at the shoulder, his hair slicked back with rain. He wasn't holding a sign. He wasn't begging. He was just sitting, watching the world rush by. There was something quietly proud about that. She couldn't explain it, but something about him looked out of place, not the kind of out of place that made you suspicious, but the kind that made you curious. He had the stillness of someone who didn't belong to the noise. When her shift ended, she packed a paper bag, a sandwich, a cup of soup, and one of the pastries that hadn't sold. Naomi's voice rang in her head. Don't go around feeding random men. That's how true crime podcasts start. Charlotte laughed quietly to herself. Then let them record this one, she murmured. She crossed the street, rain soaking the hem of her jeans. Excuse me, she said softly. You looked like you could use something warm. The man lifted his gaze. Up close, he didn't look desperate, just weathered. His eyes were a startling mix of grey and green, like the ocean after a storm. He smiled faintly. You're giving away soup now. Charlotte shrugged. Just a leftover. Don't tell my boss. He thinks kindness eats into profits. He chuckled, the sound low and genuine. Then I'll owe you a coffee. You don't owe me anything, she said. Maybe I do. People don't usually stop. Well then maybe people should, she replied. The city's already got enough cold faces. He took the bag, his fingers brushing hers for half a second. His hands were strong, but not calloused, not what she'd expect from someone sleeping rough. She noticed a faint scar near his wrist, a thin silver line. It looked surgical, not accidental. What's your name? She asked. He hesitated, then said, August. August, yes, like the month, except colder. She laughed, and it echoed under the bus stop. Well, August, if you ever want to warm up properly, we sell actual chairs and heaters inside. He gave a slow nod. Maybe tomorrow. And he did come tomorrow. The next day, the rain was gone, but the puddles stayed like stubborn memories. Charlotte was restocking sugar packets when she saw him again. Same coat, same calm face this time, sitting in the cafe's corner by the window. Naomi spotted him first. Uh-oh, she whispered. Cafe Romeo is back. Are you sure he's not secretly writing your name on napkins? Charlotte rolled her eyes. He's just a customer. Yeah, and I'm the Queen of Norway. Girl, look at him. He's got that mysterious, I've seen things vibe. Don't fall for it. Mystery pays badly. Charlotte ignored her, though she couldn't deny that something about August intrigued her. He didn't act like someone lost. He read the newspaper. He tipped. He thanked her every time she refilled his coffee. One afternoon, Naomi dropped her voice. You know what's strange? He reads the Financial Herald. Who reads that without a mortgage or a midlife crisis? Charlotte laughed. Maybe he just likes numbers. Or maybe he's an undercover loan shark. Naomi whispered dramatically. Charlotte grinned. Then at least he'll understand my student debt. Over the next few weeks, August became a quiet fixture at Brood Awakenings. He came mostly when it rained, as if the weather was his cue. Sometimes he'd ask Charlotte questions, little ones, almost like he was collecting pieces of her life. What do you study? Business. Why business? Because fairy tales don't pay rent. He laughed every time she said something like that. He seemed to enjoy her dry humor, though she often used it as armor. Once, she caught him sketching something in a notebook. It wasn't doodles. It looked like architectural drawings, buildings, layouts, floor plans. When she asked, he simply said, "Old habits." Charlotte raised a brow. "What kind of habits involve measuring windows?" "The expensive kind," he replied with a smirk. As winter approached, the cafe decorated early fairy lights, red ribbons, and an over-enthusiastic playlist that looped jingle bells until the staff questioned their will to live. Charlotte worked late on Christmas Eve. The streets were nearly empty, and the cafe was closing early. She turned the sign to closed when August walked in, brushing snow off his coat. "You again," she said, smiling. "Either you really love our coffee or you've got nowhere better to be." "Both might be true," he replied. She poured him a cup. "On the house. Consider it my holiday rebellion." He looked around. "You're closing alone. Naomi's out of town. It's just me, caffeine, and my life choices." He chuckled softly. "Sounds peaceful." "Peaceful is just another word for broke," she teased. They talked as she wiped tables, and he sipped his coffee. There was an ease between them, the kind that usually takes years to build. "Do you ever wonder," he said quietly, "why people look at the rich like they're gods and the poor like they're ghosts?" Charlotte stopped wiping. "Because most people only see what money shows." He nodded. "And you?" "I look for what silence hides." He stared at her, impressed. "You really do." "What?" "Look at people. Comes with the job," she said, pretending not to blush. When the clock struck 11, Charlotte pulled down the metal shutters. The city outside was blanketed in white. "I should walk you home," August said. "I'm not sure that's necessary," she replied. "Maybe not necessary," he said, "but polite. You fed me soup once. Least I can do is make sure you don't freeze." They stepped out into the snow, their breaths visible like smoke. The streets were quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. She wrapped her scarf tighter. He adjusted his sleeves. "So," she said, glancing at him, "if I asked where you live, will you say somewhere mysterious?" He grinned. "Something like that. Figures. You look like a man with too many secrets and not enough gloves." He laughed, a deep, unguarded sound that made her heart flicker. "Tell you what," she said, "if you ever decide to stop being mysterious, I'll let you buy me a coffee. Just one." He tilted his head. "And what if I told you I'm saving up for that?" "Then I'd say you're bad at budgeting," she teased. They stopped at her apartment building. The snow fell softer now, each flake catching the streetlight before melting on their coats. "Well, this is me," she said. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not treating me like a ghost." She smiled. "You're welcome, August." As she turned to go inside, he called out, "Merry Christmas, Charlotte." She looked back and waved. "Merry Christmas." Days became weeks. January dragged in like a tired landlord collecting rent. Charlotte kept working, studying, and pretending she didn't notice that the chair by the window stayed empty. Naomi noticed, of course. "Okay, confession time," she said. "One night sprawled on the couch in fuzzy socks. Where's your mysterious cafe man? Did he finally hitchhike to Narnia?" Charlotte laughed, though her chest tightened. "Maybe he found warmer coffee, or maybe he's rich and just remembered he has a yacht." Charlotte rolled her eyes. "He's not rich," Naomi smirked. "Sweetheart, nobody reads the Financial Herald for fun. I'm betting he owns at least one secret company, or a small island." "Then why was he sitting in the rain, Naomi?" Naomi shrugged. "Maybe the island had bad Wi-Fi." Charlotte threw a pillow at her, laughing despite herself. By February she'd convinced herself he was gone for good, until one night she saw him again. It was closing time. The cafe was dim, and the air smelled of cinnamon and espresso. When she turned from the register, he was there standing by the door like he'd never left. "August," she whispered. He smiled. "You missed me. I know, I maybe." He laughed softly. "I'll take maybe. You vanished." "I had to travel," he said vaguely. "For what?" "For perspective." "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "you could have at least sent a postcard saying still alive, not mugged." "I'll do better next time." She tried to look stern, but failed. "Fine. Coffee, always." He took his usual seat, and the world quietly resumed its rhythm, two souls orbiting the same tiny cafe, pretending not to notice how close they were drifting. Humor found them in small ways. Once Charlotte burned her sleeve on the espresso machine, and he leaped up like she'd been shot. "It's just fabric, August, not my arm." He frowned. "Still, you should be careful." She smirked. "What are you, my insurance policy?" "Maybe your guardian angel," he said. "Then you need a haircut, Mr. Angel." He laughed, and she swore the sound made even the old coffee grinder hum differently. But the truth, the dangerous truth, was already growing. Charlotte didn't know who August Stevenson really was, and he heir to the Stevenson Group. A man who had everything but peace didn't know how to tell her that the beggar she'd fed was worth billions. All he knew was that when she smiled, the noise in his head quieted, and that one day soon, the lie between them would have to meet the light. By March, spring tried to visit the city, but kept forgetting its umbrella. The morning smelled of wet asphalt and burnt toast, and the cafe buzzed again with the same mix of gossip, deadlines, and caffeine emergencies. Charlotte Ivy had grown used to seeing August Stevenson each day, always in the same corner seat, his back to the wall, his attention half on the newspaper and half, she suspected, on her. He never interrupted when she was busy. He simply looked up whenever she passed, as if his eyes had made an appointment with hers. Customers came and went, but he remained like the punctuation mark at the end of every shift. "Your mysterious philosopher's back," Naomi whispered. One afternoon while stirring milk foam, he ordered black coffee again. "Do men who drink it like that even feel emotions?" Charlotte grinned. "Maybe he's saving his feelings for later. Or maybe," Naomi said dramatically, "he's a vampire disguised as a minimalist." Charlotte tried not to laugh so hard. She spilled the cappuccino she was carrying. That afternoon, August looked up from his paper. "Rough day." She wiped her brow with the back of her hand. "Double shifts. My feet have filed for independence." He smiled. "You should get someone to massage them." "And who would volunteer for that?" she teased. He hesitated. "A gentleman with gratitude." Her cheeks warmed. "Be careful, August. Compliments from you sound like investments, high risk, unpredictable returns." He laughed softly. "I like high returns." Humor danced between them like sugar dust in sunlight, harmless but sweet. Later that week, August began helping her close the cafe. He stacked chairs, wiped tables, and even fixed the humming refrigerator with surprising skill. "Wait," Charlotte said, watching him tighten a loose wire. "You know how to fix electrical things." He shrugged. "I used to tinker with my grandfather's old machines." "Machines or mansions?" she asked playfully. He smiled but didn't answer. Naomi, watching from behind the counter, mouthed "told you so" and made a heart shape with her hands. Charlotte rolled her eyes but felt her pulse do its own drum solo. A week later, an older man walked into the cafe, wearing a charcoal suit and impatience. He looked around until his eyes landed on August. "There you are, sir," he said. "Your meeting's in 15 minutes. Charlotte froze. The man said "sir," and August's expression, calm but caught, told her more than words. "I'll be right there, Nico," he replied quietly. "Sir, meeting?" Charlotte blinked. When the man left, she leaned on the counter. "That was formal, you holding secret board meetings over my muffins." He frowned. "Still, you should be careful." She smirked. "What are you, my insurance policy?" "Maybe your guardian angel," he said. "Then you need a haircut, Mr. Angel." He laughed, and she swore the sound made even the old coffee grinder hum differently. But the truth, the dangerous truth, was already growing. Charlotte didn't know who August Stevenson really was, and he heir to the Stevenson Group. A man who had everything but peace didn't know how to tell her that the beggar she'd fed was worth billions. All he knew was that when she smiled, the noise in his head quieted, and that one day soon, the lie between them would have to meet the light. By March, spring tried to visit the city, but kept forgetting its umbrella. The morning smelled of wet asphalt and burnt toast, and the cafe buzzed again with the same mix of gossip, deadlines, and caffeine emergencies. Charlotte Ivy had grown used to seeing August Stevenson each day, always in the same corner seat, his back to the wall, his attention half on the newspaper and half, she suspected, on her. He never interrupted when she was busy. He simply looked up whenever she passed, as if his eyes had made an appointment with hers. Customers came and went, but he remained like the punctuation mark at the end of every shift. "Your mysterious philosopher's back," Naomi whispered. One afternoon while stirring milk foam, he ordered black coffee again. "Do men who drink it like that even feel emotions?" Charlotte grinned. "Maybe he's saving his feelings for later. Or maybe," Naomi said dramatically, "he's a vampire disguised as a minimalist." Charlotte tried not to laugh so hard. She spilled the cappuccino she was carrying. That afternoon, August looked up from his paper. "Rough day." She wiped her brow with the back of her hand. "Double shifts. My feet have filed for independence." He smiled. "You should get someone to massage them." "And who would volunteer for that?" she teased. He hesitated. "A gentleman with gratitude." Her cheeks warmed. "Be careful, August. Compliments from you sound like investments, high risk, unpredictable returns." He laughed softly. "I like high returns." Humor danced between them like sugar dust in sunlight, harmless but sweet. Later that week, August began helping her close the cafe. He stacked chairs, wiped tables, and even fixed the humming refrigerator with surprising skill. "Wait," Charlotte said, watching him tighten a loose wire. You know how to fix electrical things. He shrugged. I used to tinker with my grandfather's old machines. Machines or mansions? She asked, playfully. He smiled but didn't answer. Naomi, watching from behind the counter, mouthed "told you so," and made a heart shape with her hands. Charlotte rolled her eyes but felt her pulse do its own drum solo. A week later, an older man walked into the cafe, wearing a charcoal suit and impatience. He looked around until his eyes landed on August. "There you are, sir," he said. "Your meeting's in 15 minutes. Charlotte froze. The man said "sir," and August's expression, calm but caught, told her more than words. "I'll be right there, Nico," he replied quietly. "Sir, meeting?" Charlotte blinked. When the man left, she leaned on the counter. "That was formal, you holding secret board meetings over my muffins." August chuckled. "He's just an old friend. An old friend who calls you sir." He looked at her for a long moment. Some habits die harder than others, like pretending to be mysterious. "Exactly," she laughed, shaking her head. "Fine. Keep your secrets, August of the bus stop. I'm too tired to solve riddles today." But inside, a tiny spark of curiosity lit up. A quiet what if she couldn't put out. The next day, Charlotte brought an extra sandwich from home. "Peace offering," she said, handing it to him. "For keeping secrets." He grinned. "Am I forgiven? That depends. Do you eat like a normal person, or should I expect you to use gold-plated chopsticks? Only on Thursdays." They laughed until Naomi dropped a tray and hissed, "Lovebirds, table two's waiting." Charlotte's laughter carried across the cafe, and August caught himself thinking he hadn't heard something so unguarded in years. When he left that evening, he paused by the door. "You know, Charlotte, most people look but don't really see." "And what do you see?" she asked. "A woman who doesn't know how rare she is." She blinked, caught between surprise and embarrassment. "You really should warn people before saying things like that." "Why?" "So they can grab a chair before their knees forget how to function." He laughed. "Noted." She smiled, but after he walked out, she stood at the counter longer than necessary, pretending to count change while her heart replayed his words like a favorite song. Weeks passed, and spring finally settled in properly, scattering blossoms over every corner like confetti from heaven. The cafe switched to iced drinks, and Charlotte switched from denial to acceptance. She was in love with a man she barely knew. Naomi caught her staring out the window one evening. "You look like a woman waiting for a plot twist." "Maybe I am," Charlotte murmured. "Just make sure it's not the kidnapped by a handsome billionaire kind." Charlotte snorted. "Please," as if billionaires hang out at budget cafes. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Keep telling yourself that, Cinderella." Later that night, Charlotte closed the shop and stepped outside. August stood across the street under a flickering lamppost. He smiled when she saw him, and she couldn't help it. She laughed. "You really need to stop appearing like a scene from a mystery novel," she said, crossing over. "I like good lighting," he teased. "Sure you do." They walked together down the quiet street. The city hummed low and tired, the air thick with the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. "Charlotte," he said after a while, "do you ever wish you could just disappear for a while? No noise, no expectations, just quiet." She nodded. "Every exam week," he chuckled. "I mean permanently." "Permanently sounds lonely." "It's not," he said softly. "If someone's willing to meet you there." She glanced up at him. "Anyone waiting for you in your quiet place?" He smiled faintly. "Not yet." Something in the way he said it made her chest ache a little. The next morning, August didn't show up, nor the next. Charlotte told herself she didn't care, but the empty chair by the window seemed louder than usual. Even Naomi noticed. "Your mystery man ghosted you." Charlotte sighed. "He probably found better coffee, or he realized you were falling for him, and panicked." Charlotte threw a towel at her. "You read too many romance blogs. Someone has to do research," Naomi quipped. By the 5th day, Charlotte started to worry. She checked hospitals, shelters, even the bus stop where she'd first seen him. Nothing. When she returned to the cafe, a small envelope waited under the sugar jar. It was addressed to her in neat handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside was a note. "Didn't vanish. Needed time. Don't feed anyone else soup. I'm selfish like that." Charlotte laughed through the tears that surprised her. Naomi found her wiping her eyes and asked, "Who died?" "No one," Charlotte said softly. "Someone just remembered to live." A week later, August returned, looking cleaner, sharper, but still himself. The same smile, the same eyes that could disarm gravity. "You came back," she said. "I missed bad coffee." "Liar." "Fine," he said, laughing. "I missed you." She folded her arms. You think you can just walk in and buy you dinner, he interrupted. She paused, pretending to consider it. Maybe if dessert's included. He smiled. Then it's a deal. They ate at a small diner by the river. Nothing fancy, just the kind of place where the chairs squeak and the fries come with too much salt. Between jokes about burnt toast and conversations about dreams, Charlotte forgot every reason she'd ever built walls. August didn't fill silences with noise, he filled them with understanding. When they stepped outside, the night breeze carried laughter from nearby tables. Charlotte looked up at the stars. Do you believe people meet for a reason? She asked. Sometimes, he said. Other times I think the universe gets bored and plays matchmaker. She laughed. Then I owe the universe a tip. The moon hung low, casting silver light on the river. August turned to her. Charlotte, he said, if you could ask for one thing right now, what would it be? She thought for a moment. To not wake up tomorrow wondering if this was real. He stepped closer. Then I'll make sure it is. Her breath caught, and for a second, the world forgot to spin. That night Charlotte couldn't sleep. She replayed every word, every laugh, every look. And though she didn't know who August Stevenson truly was, she knew one thing. Her life had already shifted around him, because love, when it finally finds you, doesn't knock politely. It enters, dripping wet from the rain, carrying secrets and smiles, and sometimes, billionaire eyes, hiding behind a beggar's coat. The rain returned, as if it had been waiting for a cue. It came softly, at first a hush on the rooftops, then thickened until even the street lamps wore halos. Charlotte Ivy leaned against the cafe window, watching the drops chase each other down the glass. Naomi Holt, perched on the counter, eating cookies that were technically for customers, sighed. You know, she said, most girls stare at diamonds. You stare at rainfall like it owes you rent. Charlotte smiled. Rain doesn't disappoint anyone. Naomi popped another cookie into her mouth. Neither would that handsome man, if you just marry him and get it over with. Charlotte swatted her with a towel. He's not that kind of man. Oh please, the way he looks at you could melt refrigerated butter. That evening, August Stevenson showed up, just before closing. His coat was soaked, but he didn't seem to mind. I was hoping you'd still be here, he said, brushing rain from his hair. Charlotte lifted an eyebrow. You always show up when it rains. Should I start charging for weather forecasts? He grinned. Maybe the rain follows you. Then it's got poor navigation skills. She poured him a cup of coffee. Cream, only if you stir it. Her hand paused mid-air, cheeks warming. Why? Because I like when you touch things I'm about to hold. She blinked, torn between laughter and disbelief. August Stevenson. That was dangerously close to charm. He leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. Then let me cross the line. Their eyes met. Outside, thunder rolled lazily, like the sky sighing. When her shift ended, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. August offered to walk her home again. They strolled side by side beneath his umbrella, the street gleaming like spilled silver. Halfway down the block, he stopped. Charlotte, he said softly, you ever notice how quiet the world gets when rain meets dusk? She looked around. It's like the city's whispering. He smiled. Maybe it's jealous. Of what? Of us. She laughed, shaking her head. You practice these lines in front of a mirror? No, he said, stepping closer. But maybe I should. The air thickened. His hand brushed hers. She meant to pull away, but didn't. Charlotte, he murmured, his breath mixing with the rain. Sometimes the richest whispers come from a stranger's kiss. Before she could reply, he leaned in soft, uncertain, and kissed her. It wasn't movie perfect. Their noses bumped, and she tasted rain, more than romance. But something in her chest opened, quiet and full. When they pulled apart, she exhaled a laugh. You know, for a man of mystery, you have terrible timing. He smiled. Then I'll keep practicing. Good. You'll need at least 100 more tries. Naomi's reaction the next morning was predictable. You what? She squealed, nearly spilling her cereal. You kissed him? Charlotte rubbed her temples. Technically he kissed me, and you technically allowed it. Charlotte Ivy, you saint of self-control, have you lost your halo? Charlotte burst out laughing. It was just one of those moments. One of those moments that lead to wedding hashtags, Naomi declared. Mark my words. Days became a quiet blur of secret smiles and half-spoken confessions. August didn't push for more. He simply showed up, steady as sunrise, bringing small surprises, a croissant she hadn't tried, a book of poems he said sounded like her thoughts, a coin he claimed was lucky. Keep it, he told her, for when you forget you're the luck. Sometimes they talked about everything, dreams, fears, the kind of life they'd live if money wasn't a question. What would you do? she asked once. If you could start over. He looked at her for a long time. I'd find you sooner. One Saturday, he convinced her to skip work for an afternoon walk. They went to the old pier by the river, where children fed gulls and couples shared popcorn that no one actually wanted. Charlotte leaned against the railing, wind teasing her hair. I haven't skipped work in 2 years. If I get fired, you're paying my tuition. Deal, he said. She laughed. You agree too quickly. Either you're rich or you're reckless. Maybe both. She squinted at him. You're hiding something. He grinned. Of course, it keeps you interested. You're impossible. And yet, he said, tilting his head, you're still here. She shook her head, laughing. Fine, mystery man. But next time you vanish for a week, I'm changing your coffee order to decaf out of spite. He feigned horror. Cruel woman. They both laughed until a gust of wind stole her scarf. August caught it mid-air, triumphant. Reflexes of a superhero, he said. Or a man afraid of retail replacements, she teased. The sun dipped low, painting gold across the water. Charlotte sighed. Sometimes I wish life stayed like this simple. No deadlines, no rent, no fear of the future. August's expression softened. Maybe one day it will. She smiled, unaware that somewhere behind that promise lay a mansion, a boardroom, and a name printed on 100 headlines, his name. That night, when Naomi asked how her date with Destiny went, Charlotte said, "It was fine. I laughed too much, he smiled too much, and now I owe the universe a thank you card." Naomi grinned. Careful. That kind of happiness attracts nosy neighbors and minor miracles. Charlotte fell asleep, smiling. She dreamt of rain and whispered wealth, not the kind locked in banks, but the kind found in quiet hearts and strangers' kisses. Spring folded into early summer, the season that makes even old bricks look forgiving. Charlotte Ivy had begun to notice small miracles. Bus drivers who waited an extra second, customers who remembered her name, the way August Stevenson always arrived just before her shift ended, as though his watch kept time with her heartbeat. He no longer looked like a man the rain forgot. He looked rested, almost peaceful. Yet the calm around him never felt ordinary. It carried the weight of someone who'd lived too fast and was now trying to walk instead of run. Charlotte liked that he listened. Most people waited for their turn to speak. August waited for truth to appear between sentences. That evening, the cafe was slow, sunlight sliding through the window, blinds in polite stripes. Naomi Holt hummed off key while wiping cups, pretending not to watch Charlotte's table. "You know," Naomi said at last, "if that man stares at you any harder, the health inspector's going to classify it as a heat source." Charlotte rolled her eyes. "He's just thoughtful." Thoughtful is what women say when they don't want to admit interested. Charlotte laughed. "Then he's catastrophically thoughtful." Naomi grinned. "Good. I'll start printing wedding menus." When the doorbell jingled again, August stepped in wearing a faint smile and holding a single tulip wrapped in paper. "It's crooked," he said, handing it to her. "Like most beautiful things." She accepted it, fighting a grin. "You're full of lines. Only the honest ones. You practice honesty in front of a mirror too." "Sometimes," he said, "but the mirror rarely blushes." Charlotte bit her lip to hide the laugh that wanted out. "Sit down before Naomi throws a spoon at us." After closing, they walked toward the river where food stalls stayed open late. The air smelled of roasted corn and optimism. Charlotte licked ice cream from her wrist and groaned. "I swear, no matter how graceful I pretend to be, dessert exposes the truth." August chuckled. "I think the truth suits you. Sticky and cold, unfiltered," he said. "Everyone else polishes themselves for the world. You just show up." She blinked, unsure what to do with the warmth that spread through her. "You sound like a man writing a confession." "Maybe I am," he said softly. "You make me want to tell the parts I never say out loud." They sat on a bench overlooking the dark water. "Tell me something no one knows," she said. He hesitated. "I used to think money could make people behave better. Turns out it just gives bad manners better shoes." She laughed quietly. "So you were rich before the bus stop days?" He looked at her, startled, then smiled. "Caught me. It was obvious," she said. "You read stock pages for leisure. No broke man does that, and yet you still talk to me." "I liked the mystery," she teased, "and your appetite for soup." He shook his head. "You liked saving strays." She met his eyes. "Maybe I saw someone trying to remember who he was." Silence settled between them, not heavy, just full. In the following weeks, August asked more about her life. "How long have you been on your own?" "Since 16, she said. "Orphanage first, then scholarships. I collect part-time jobs the way other people collect hobbies." Doesn't it tire you? Sometimes, she said. But being tired means I'm moving. Standing still scares me more. He admired that how she turned hardship into rhythm. He'd spent years surrounded by people who hired strength but didn't own any. Charlotte carried hers like it was part of her wardrobe. One night he offered to drive her home after a late shift. She laughed when she saw the car, an aging sedan that coughed before starting. Really, August? For a man of mystery, this isn't exactly James Bond material. It's honest transportation, he said. It moves forward and occasionally sideways. She laughed so hard the hiccups followed them all the way to her street. They began to share small rituals. He waited outside after work. She brought him leftover pastries. Sometimes they argued playfully. Why do you always wear grey? She asked. You look like a storm cloud pretending to be polite. Neutral colors make people comfortable. You mean invisible? He smiled. And yet you still found me. One evening the cafe hosted an open mic night. Naomi forced Charlotte to read a poem she'd written years ago, something about gratitude and coffee stains. Charlotte stood trembling at the microphone, while August sat in the crowd, watching like the words themselves were jewels. When she finished, the small audience applauded, and she nearly tripped getting off stage. August met her halfway. You were brilliant, he said. I rhymed latte with heartache. That's not brilliance, that's desperation. He laughed. Then desperate looks good on you. Careful, she warned. I might start believing you. That's the plan. After the event, they walked through the alley behind the cafe, fairy lights blinking overhead. Charlotte spoke quietly. You know, I never planned for any of this school, work, meeting you. I just keep trying to make ends meet before they file for divorce. August chuckled but reached for her hand. Yoa, make the chaos look elegant. Don't start, she said, pretending to scold. Flattery makes me suspicious. Then I'll call it observation. That's worse. Then let me just hold your hand and stay quiet. She smiled. Best idea you've had all night. Weeks passed. The city grew louder with summer tourists, yet their little world stayed soft. August would sometimes disappear for a day or two, claiming errands. Charlotte never asked. She trusted the rhythm between them. One afternoon he arrived late, looking exhausted. You all right? She asked. He nodded. Just business I can't seem to escape. Then maybe it's chasing the wrong man. He laughed under his breath. If only business listened to logic. Mine listens to tips, she said. You could learn something, he smiled, the tension easing. Maybe I already have. The more he watched her, the clearer it became. Her strength wasn't loud, it whispered. She made decency look rebellious in a world that applauded arrogance. He realized he wanted to protect her, not because she was fragile, but because the world didn't deserve her kind of simplicity. At night, lying awake in his temporary apartment, he'd think about her smile and wonder how a woman with so little could give so much peace. He used to measure wealth in numbers. Now he measured it in the second she held his gaze before laughing. One Sunday they met at a small chapel near the park. She liked the quiet there. I come here to remind myself that silence isn't empty, she said. He sat beside her on the wooden pew. What do you ask for when you pray? Strength to stay kind, she said simply. It's harder than it looks. He nodded. Then you're the strongest person I know, she smiled. You should meet Naomi. She fights with delivery apps. He laughed softly. I meant it, Charlotte. I know, she whispered. For a moment he wanted to tell her everything, that he wasn't poor, that the business he couldn't escape bore his family name, that the man at the bus stop had been an escape attempt, not misfortune. But he stayed silent. Confession felt too soon. Losing her felt too easy. That night, Naomi cornered Charlotte in their kitchen. So, she said, arms crossed, when do I meet this rain magnet of yours? Charlotte groaned. Never, if you call him that. Naomi grinned. I'm serious. If he's going to keep walking you home, I need to verify he's not an alien or a pyramid scheme recruiter. Charlotte laughed. He's neither. He's just good. Naomi softened. Then keep him, Charlie. Good men are like free Wi-Fi, rare and gone, the moment you brag about them. Later, Charlotte found herself thinking about that. Was he really good? Yes. But why? What was behind those calm eyes that seemed to know every answer except their own? Still, whenever he smiled, the questions melted. Some hearts don't need explanations. They need presence. One evening, as they walked by the river again, she told him about her mother. She used to sing old jazz songs while ironing clothes. She said, if life gives you wrinkles, at least press them with rhythm. August chuckled. She sounds wonderful. She was, Charlotte said, eyes shining. She didn't have much, but she taught me how to love what I have. He nodded, moved. She'd be proud of you, you think. I know. They stood quietly, listening to the water slap against the pier. August, she said finally, what about you? Who taught you to be this? He hesitated. Someone who forgot to teach himself the same lesson. Charlotte looked at him curiously, but didn't press. Everyone carried ghosts. She respected his. By midsummer, their connection felt less like new love, and more like something that had been waiting its turn. He showed her small joys, how to slow dance on empty streets, how to whistle through cupped hands, how to find constellations above the city glare. She showed him how to laugh without purpose, and how to make a meal out of nothing but noodles and hope. Sometimes they joked about the future. Maybe one day I'll own a bigger cafe, she said, and I'll invest, he replied. Dangerous words, mister. Investors expect returns. I'll settle for your smile, as profit. You're terrible at business. Only when it involves my heart. The humor between them made space for tenderness. Every shared laugh built a wall against the world's noise. And yet, beneath all that warmth, August carried a quiet fear. Once the truth about his wealth surfaced, would she still see the same man she'd fed soup to? He prayed not out of habit, but out of hope that her faith in him was stronger than the illusion he'd built. Because by now, August Stevenson knew one thing beyond all doubt. The richest man in the city was the one holding Charlotte Ivy's hand. Evening found the cafe closing early, the first sign of autumn brushing through the streets. The air tasted faintly of roasted chestnuts from the corner vendor, and the city lights shimmered like coins scattered on velvet. Charlotte Ivy finished wiping the counter, humming one of the old jazz songs her mother used to sing. She was halfway through stacking cups when the doorbell chimed. August Stevenson stood there, no coat, no umbrella, just rain in his hair and something different in his eyes. You're late, she teased, trying to hide how relieved she felt. He smiled faintly. I needed courage first. For coffee, for honesty. The tone in his voice made her set the cups down. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, he said quietly. Everything's overdue. They sat at their usual table by the window. Outside, the world was soft and silver. Charlotte waited, her heartbeat tracing questions she didn't know how to ask. Charlotte, August began. When you met me, what did you see? She thought for a moment. A man who needed soup and maybe a second chance. He smiled, grateful for her humor, even now. And if I told you that man never needed the soup, but the chance was real, her brow furrowed. You're speaking in riddles again. I'm speaking in truth for once. He drew a small envelope from his pocket, worn at the edges. Inside was a photo him in a tailored suit, standing before a marble building with the sign Stevenson Group Holdings. Charlotte blinked. Wait, Stevenson. He nodded. The same. It's my family's company. For a long moment, all she could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the quiet rain. So, she said finally, you're rich, uncomfortably so, and you've been sitting here drinking $2 coffee for months. He gave a small, nervous laugh. I wanted to see if I could be liked, without everything attached to my name. Charlotte leaned back, stunned. You could have just told me. I was afraid you'd stop seeing me. Her first instinct was anger. Her second was pity. Her third love that refused to run away. You absolute idiot, she whispered. He blinked. I deserve that. Yes, you do. I fed you soup. And it was the best meal of my life. Despite herself, she laughed, shaking her head. So all this time, you were what? Auditioning humility. I was trying to remember it. The line hung there, fragile and true. She looked at the photo again. The building behind him screamed wealth, yet the man before her looked smaller now, stripped of the disguise but also the defense it gave him. You know, she said softly, most people pretend to be richer. You're the only one I've met who pretended to be poorer. I didn't pretend poverty, he said. I pretended freedom. Freedom from what? From the noise. From the people who bowed when they wanted something and smiled when they lied. You were the first person who didn't want anything from me except company. I didn't know how much I needed that. Charlotte sighed. I'm not mad, August. I'm just trying to figure out how to fit the man in the photo with the one who fixed our refrigerator using a butter knife. He chuckled. That was genuine skill, not deception. She smiled. Good, because you owe me 100 coffee refills worth of truth. He took her hand across the table. Ask anything. Fine, she said. Your full name? August Henry Stevenson. Age? 33. Emotionally 90. Assets? He winced. Can we skip that one? She laughed. the tension easing. You're lucky I like broke personalities. Then I'm safe. He reached into his pocket again, pulling out a small velvet box, not flashy, just simple navy cloth, with frayed edges, as if he'd carried it too long. Charlotte froze. August. He opened it slowly. Inside, a modest gold band gleamed under the cafe light. I didn't plan to do this here, he said softly. But this is where you fed me, where you saw me before anyone else did. If there's one place that feels honest, it's this booth. She covered her mouth, eyes bright with tears. I can't promise you a fairy tale, he went on. Just peace, laughter, a life where no one has to pretend. You taught me that wealth means nothing if you can't share warmth with someone who believes in you. So Charlotte Ivy, will you stay, even now that you know everything? Her answer came in a quiet laugh that trembled. I'd stay even if you turned out to be the janitor of that building. I tried that once. The uniform didn't suit me. She laughed harder, wiping her eyes. Yes, August, of course, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and for the first time since he'd met her, the rain outside sounded like applause. The cafe smelled of espresso and new beginnings. Charlotte sat still, staring at the ring like it had its own heartbeat. August Stevenson watched her the way a man watches sunrise, half disbelief, half worship. Naomi Holt burst in 5 minutes later, dripping from the rain and carrying gossip like luggage. Don't faint, she said, but someone outside is parking a car that looks like it eats smaller cars for breakfast. Who owns? She stopped mid-sentence. Oh, her eyes dropped to the ring. I leave you alone for one night and you upgrade your entire tax bracket. Charlotte laughed. It's not like that. Oh, it's exactly like that, Naomi said, folding her arms. You're glowing. Either you're engaged or you discovered a moisturizer with divine powers. August stood, extending a polite hand. August Stevenson. Naomi blinked, recognizing the surname. Wait, the Stevenson Group. The people who build skyscrapers and break internet search engines. The same, he said. Naomi looked between them, speechless for the first time in recorded history. Then she whispered to Charlotte, you fed him soup. You literally fed a billionaire soup. Charlotte grinned. Yes, and he still owes me the bowl. Naomi pointed at August. If you hurt her, I'll make sure your company's next skyscraper has crooked windows. Noted, he said with a smile. I'll build them straight, for her. Naomi softened, wiping an eye. She swore wasn't tearing. Fine, congratulations both of you, but if your wedding has a seating chart, I demand to sit near the cake. Later that night, the cafe lights dimmed. Charlotte locked the doors, while August flipped the chairs onto tables. The quiet between them was easy, like the pause after laughter. So, she said, turning the ring, how does it feel, knowing your fiancé still makes minimum wage? He chuckled. Comforting. Someone in this relationship understands real math. And how does it feel, she added, knowing you proposed with hands that still smell like coffee beans? Perfect, he said. Every time I catch the scent, I'll remember who saved me from my own noise. She smiled. That's poetic. You sure you're not secretly writing song lyrics? Only love songs, he said, terribly off-key ones. They walked home under one umbrella, the ring catching faint reflections from the street lamps. Charlotte felt lighter, not because wealth had entered her life, but because deception had left it. I kept waiting for the moment I'd wake up and realize this was impossible, she said, and I think I stopped waiting. He squeezed her hand. Good, because I plan on waking up next to you for the rest of my life. She laughed. That line's too smooth. Did your PR team write it? No, he said. That one's straight from the heart, unproofread and unpolished. Days turned into a quiet celebration. They didn't announce the engagement with fireworks. They announced it with peace. August showed up at the cafe early every morning, still ordering her coffee before she could make it herself. Charlotte insisted on paying for half the cup, claiming financial equality builds character. Naomi started a countdown on the break room whiteboard titled Days Until Charlotte Marries, an actual headline. She added doodles of tiny coffee cups, wearing top hats. One evening, as Charlotte wiped away the last doodle, she whispered, "It still feels unreal." Naomi hugged her. That's how real love starts, when reality can't explain it, but gratitude can. August and Charlotte chose a small date, a chapel, family, a few friends, and a reception menu written entirely by Naomi, who insisted that he may be rich, but flavor has no hierarchy. The night before the wedding, August found Charlotte sitting on the apartment balcony, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. "You're quiet," he said. "Just thinking," she replied. About how a bowl of soup started all this. He smiled. That soup was destiny's appetizer. She laughed softly. You and your metaphors. I mean it, he said. That day I'd almost given up on finding anyone who looked at me and didn't see a bank statement. Then you came with a paper bag and a heart full of faith. I don't ever want to forget that. Charlotte reached for his hand. Then don't. Just promise me one thing. Anything. No matter how high life climbs. Keep that corner seat in the cafe. That's where love felt most real. He nodded. It'll always be our corner. The next morning, sunlight broke over the city, touching every glass pane with gold. Charlotte walked down the aisle in a simple cream dress. August waited, not as the billionaire everyone expected, but as the man who had once sat in the rain. When they exchanged vows, they didn't quote poets or speeches. He said, "You loved me when I had nothing." She answered, "And now we have everything that matters." The congregation smiled. Naomi dabbed her eyes with a napkin meant for cake. That night, long after the guests left, August and Charlotte returned to the quiet cafe. The sign still flickered faintly above them. He unlocked the door, turned on the small lamp by their window booth, and set 2 cups on the table. No champagne, she teased. He poured coffee instead. It's what started us. They sat side by side, hands intertwined, the rain beginning again outside. He looked at her ring, then at her smile. I used to think wealth whispered through stock prices and deals, he said. But the only whisper I ever want to hear again is this, the whispering wealth of a stranger's kiss. Charlotte leaned closer, smiling through quiet tears. Then kiss me again, stranger. And he did, slow, sure, without audience or applause, while rain tapped softly against the glass, sounding exactly like gratitude. The city had learned to say their names together. August and Charlotte Stevenson, whispered at dinner parties, printed on glossy magazines, murmured between envy and admiration. Some called it a miracle marriage. Others called it a social experiment with excellent lighting. But inside their quiet home on the hill, it was just 2 people learning how to fold their laundry together without starting a debate. Charlotte still worked at the cafe sometimes, not because she needed to, but because she liked the sound of the grinder and the comfort of small talk. Mrs. Billionaire, Naomi teased one morning. You do realize the average person retires after inheriting an empire, right? Charlotte laughed. And leave you here unsupervised? Never, Naomi grinned. Admit it. You miss normal life. Normal life built me, Charlotte said. Why would I ever stop visiting the construction site? When she arrived at corporate events beside August, whispers followed like perfume. She was a cafe girl, right? He could have married anyone. She doesn't even wear designer shoes. The comments stung at first, but she learned to smile through them. Her mother once said, when people talk behind you, let them. They're already in the right position. So Charlotte smiled and stayed kind. One evening, August returned home later than usual, tension following him like a shadow. Charlotte met him at the door with coffee and quiet eyes. Tough day, he exhaled. Board members questioning my decisions again. They think marrying you was impulsive. She frowned. Impulsive? They said I'm letting emotions cloud business judgment. That investors like fairy tales only when they end before lunch. Charlotte smiled faintly. Then we'll just have to turn this into a bestseller. He chuckled softly. Some of the weightlifting. You make everything sound fixable. That's because everything is, she said, except Naomi's cooking. He laughed properly this time, resting his head against hers. You're my calm, Charlotte, and you're my favorite headache, she said, kissing his cheek. Humor became their armor. When tabloids printed photos of her carrying groceries, Charlotte joked that at least she'd made the headlines, holding something useful. One morning, a newspaper ran a headline, Cafe Girl at the Castle, Love or Strategy. Naomi nearly threw a spatula at the television. Who writes these things? Do they think romance is a tax deduction? Charlotte sipped her tea. If they keep it up, I'll start charging royalties. But there were moments when the weight pressed harder. At a charity gala, a socialite whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Sweet girl, but she'll never blend in. You can't teach grace. It's inherited. Charlotte turned, smiled gently, and said, luckily kindness doesn't require a family tree. The table went silent. Even August looked both proud and terrified. Afterward he squeezed her hand. Remind me never to underestimate that polite tone of yours. Don't worry, she said. It's still under warranty. The storm behind the curtains wasn't loud. It was made of small tests. Public life required performance. Private life required patience. She learned which smiles were genuine and which hands shook only for cameras. Yet every night she returned to the same ritual: prayer, tea, laughter. Wealth could build walls, but faith kept the windows open. One afternoon, she surprised August by showing up at his office with a homemade lunch. His assistant blinked. "Ma'am, we usually order from the hotel." Charlotte smiled. "Then today you'll eat something that doesn't require a chef's autobiography." Inside, August looked up from his desk, astonished. "You brought food." "Sandwiches," she said. "The kind that make spreadsheets taste better." He grinned, closing his laptop. "I think the company's morale just doubled. Then I'll bill you for consulting." They laughed together, unaware that outside, half the office staff peeked through glass doors like spectators at a rare solar event, the billionaire eating homemade sandwiches with his wife. Over the months, even skeptics softened. The board realized profits were rising, staff turnover was dropping, and August smiled more often. Happiness, it seemed, had good business instincts. Charlotte began organizing small charity events for orphan students, quietly funding scholarships under her maiden name. When August asked why she didn't take credit, she said, "Because miracles sound truer when they don't have signatures." He never argued with that. Then came the evening she overheard a conversation outside the boardroom, two executives complaining that sentimentality was bad for profit margins. One said, "His wife's past doesn't suit our image." Charlotte froze, then walked in. "Then maybe your image needs adjustment." The room fell silent. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply told them about how hard work builds empathy, how the cafe taught her more about leadership than any seminar, how profit meant nothing without purpose. When she finished, even the most cynical executive clapped quietly. Later, August found her waiting by the elevator. "You faced them?" he asked. She shrugged. "Someone had to remind them that character has better returns than currency." He smiled, full of pride. "You keep rescuing me," she teased. "Consider it my second job." Months later, the same magazines that once mocked her began to praise her grace. Charlotte Stevens, the heart behind the empire, from cafe to corporate compassion. Naomi read one headline out loud and smirked. "Took them long enough. I should start a PR agency. I'd charge double for every apology they print." Charlotte laughed. "Save it. They'll find another rumor soon." Naomi winked. "Then I'll invoice that one too." That winter, August came home early one night, carrying flowers and exhaustion. She asked. He nodded. "Meetings, reports, the usual chaos, but it feels lighter now." "Maybe success learned its manners," she said, handing him tea. He smiled. "Or maybe love runs the company better than I do." She laughed softly. "Then we're rich in ways the board can't measure." They spent the rest of the evening dancing barefoot in the living room, music playing low from Naomi's old playlist. The city outside sparkled, unaware that its most talked-about couple preferred quiet joys, burnt toast, shared glances, whispered prayers before bed. Their wealth stayed behind curtains, their peace lived in the open, and when people spoke of the Stevensons now, they didn't whisper scandal. They whispered faith, laughter, and partnership, proof that storms only strengthen homes built on gratitude. Years rolled forward the way soft tides do, quietly, faithfully, one gentle wave at a time. The newspapers had long stopped printing their faces. The world had moved on to fresher headlines. But in a small house that smelled of roasted beans and rain, August and Charlotte Stevenson were still writing their own news day by day, cup by cup. Their mornings began with mismatched mugs and the same argument. "Mine's the blue one," Charlotte would say. August would grin. "No, mine's the blue one. Yours is slightly aquamarine." She'd raise an eyebrow. "If you start naming paint shades again, I'm switching you to instant coffee." And just like that, laughter would fill the kitchen before sunlight did. The empire outside their door had grown, but inside, life had simplified. They still visited the cafe twice a week. The sign "Brewed Awakenings" had been repainted, though the light still flickered like an old friend. Naomi Holt managed it now, proudly declaring herself director of caffeine and common sense. "Look at you," Charlotte teased one afternoon, "from barista to boss." Naomi grinned. "Miracles happen when you stop microwaving ambition." Charlotte laughed. "Put that on a mug." Already, there was a mug she'd had it printed herself. On quiet Sundays, August taught neighborhood children to build toy boats in the garden fountain. Charlotte hosted small reading circles for orphan students, the same age she'd once been when the world felt too large. They never advertised it, never cut ribbons. Doing good had become as natural as breathing. One afternoon, while August sanded a wooden toy, he said, You realize every time we help someone, I hear your mother's song in my head. Charlotte smiled. She'd like that. She always said kindness was her favorite hymn. She'd also like Naomi's cooking, he added. Charlotte burst out laughing. No one likes Naomi's cooking. I do, he said. It reminds me how brave taste buds can be. Years gave them silver strands and slower mornings, but not boredom. Love had settled between them like a well-worn blanket, soft, reliable, still warm in the corners. One rainy evening, Charlotte sat by the window with tea, watching the sky blur into watercolor. August joined her, placing a blanket over her shoulders. "Remember the first time you saw me?" he asked. She smiled, a soaked stranger pretending not to freeze. "And you fed me soup." "I was reckless," she said. "Could have been dangerous." He kissed her temple. "Oh, it was. You nearly killed my loneliness." She laughed softly. "You still talk like poetry got lost and found a home in your mouth, only because you stayed to listen. When storms rattled the windows, they read scripture aloud, taking turns until the thunder sounded like applause. August would close the book and say, "I used to think faith was a building. Now I know it's a person handing soup to a stranger." Charlotte would answer, "And love is what happens when the stranger keeps showing up." On their 10th anniversary, Naomi threw them a small dinner, 3 friends, candles, too much frosting. "Speech," Naomi demanded, pointing a spoon. Charlotte shook her head. "No speeches, just gratitude." August lifted his glass. "To the woman who gave me a reason to live honestly." Naomi sniffed loudly. "If anyone needs me, I'll be crying into the tiramisu." They laughed until the candles melted into puddles of light. That night, after Naomi left and the dishes were done, Charlotte and August walked through the drizzle toward the old bus stop. Their beginning. The bench was new now, the shelter repainted, but the air smelled exactly the same. Rain, metal, and memory. Charlotte touched the pole where the paint had chipped. "Feels smaller." "We grew," August said. They sat together, hands intertwined, silence stretching comfortably. The streetlights flickered, just as they had years before. "Do you ever miss the disguise?" she asked. "No," he said. "It brought me here." "That's enough," she smiled. "Good answer." He looked at her wedding ring, the simple band still shining. "You know that night, I said something ridiculous about whispers and kisses." "I remember," she said. "I nearly laughed in your face." "You should have. It was corny. It was perfect," she whispered. "Because you meant it." He turned to her, eyes kind and steady. "Then let's prove it again." He leaned in and kissed her, soft as prayer. Outside, the rain slowed to a hush, as though heaven itself were listening. When they finally stood, Charlotte looked back once more at the bus stop, at the ghost of 2 people who had started everything with kindness and curiosity. She whispered, "If anyone ever asks what we were worth, I'll tell them we were priceless in the currency of grace." August smiled, and compound interest in laughter. She laughed through tears. "Always the businessman. Always your man," he said. Hand in hand, they walked home through puddles that mirrored the city lights. Each step sounded like gratitude, each glance like promise. And as the door of their little cafe-scented home closed behind them, the world outside faded to quiet, leaving only the echo of a single truth that had carried them from strangers to soulmates. True wealth never shouts. It whispers through faith, through laughter, through love that lasts.